Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's Trend Report. I'm glad you're here today for what I know is going to be a really fun conversation with today's special guest, which is somebody that I've known for way too many years for us to say out loud. And with that, I will welcome my longtime friend and colleague, Michelle Warren, to the show. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
I am fantastic, Sid. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad I finally was able to twist your arm enough to actually get you to come on because you resisted for way too long.
Yeah, about eight or 9 months.
Something like that. So, Michelle, before we dive into our conversation today, take a moment, please, and introduce yourself and tell our community who you are and what you do.
Okay, so Michelle Warren, I'm the president of Catalyst Consulting Group, which was just started in January, and I work with small business manufacturers to help them to create public sector programs. So I've been in the industry for a very long time. I just figured out about half of my life I've been selling furniture, and I just have a ton of experience, and I love working with small businesses, so I started Catalyst.
So first off, let me welcome you to the world of entrepreneurship and this crazy ride because expect the unexpected, I think, is the appropriate terminology for that.
Yes, I agree. And you've been such a blessing to me since the beginning. So I'm so grateful for you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been my pleasure to help you. And I'm excited for you because I think what you're doing is really unique and very niche down, which we really need in our industry. And so before we dive into a little of the details about exactly what you do, our history dates back to the 19 somethings. So when we both worked at a major brand together, and I remember the first time I met you, you probably don't remember this, but the first time I met you, you were standing up at a sales meeting, giving a presentation about new business development. Do you remember that presentation?
I do remember that. I didn't know that was the first time we met, but I do remember that.
Yeah. And so what's really funny about our journey is we worked this brand together. Then you came to work for me on my team in global accounts. And then we went our separate ways and you went into the dealer world and I went, and then our paths crossed again.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting. I don't think that I have anyone besides you that I have like that intertwining like throughout my career.
Yeah, it has definitely intertwined. I remember I called you and I said, hey, I'm putting myself back in the job market. However sadistic that this sounds, I miss selling panels. I said that out loud. I miss selling panels. And you were working at AIS and you pretty much pounced on me. I think the first remark was, you have to come work for me. Yes. And I was like, no, Michelle, I'm not coming to work for you.
Yes. Well, you said some other stuff too, which we're not going to mention. It was very funny though. One of my favorite stories in the industry, but yes, but I did finally twist your arm.
You did. It was a lot of fun. And then we go our separate ways again. And now we're back intertwined again in consulting and helping small businesses grow and develop. So though we're not working, we don't work for each other or together, but we do work alongside each other, which I also think is very, very interesting. So, and it's likely one of the best parts about this industry, right? Is the people and the longevity of the relationships that you can have with people. I think that's one of the most powerful parts of this whole industry.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I think about it all the time. And people just so want to help other people. Like, I don't know if other industries are like this because I don't have others to base it on. Yep. But it's always amazed me throughout my career how, when I reached out to you, hey, I'm thinking about starting this consulting, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to help you. And you came alongside of me and helped me. I've had that my entire career. When I decided to get into GSA, and selling to the government and starting programs for, the company that I was working with, I had a handful of people that were like, we'll help you, whatever it is, right? I don't think I could have done it without them, or maybe I could have, but it would have been a much harder, longer road.
Sure.
And I always had somebody that I could call, right? And I spread it out because I didn't want to call the same person all the time. But, when there was that question that I was like, oh crap, I don't know what that means, or I don't know how to answer that, or, what does that really mean? There was someone I could call that would help me. And sometimes they were competitors, right? But we weren't competing on a job. So it didn't matter, right? They were just willing to help me with knowledge. And just that sharing of knowledge has just been amazing. And so, I love to do that too, right? Like, I love when people call me and have a question. I'm so willing to help them because I think, how would I have gotten to where I am and to be able to do what I'm doing if it wasn't for all the people that were alongside me on journey.
Yeah, it's really important. So I want to ask, explain a little bit about what it is that you do at Catalyst. What's your, I know your focus is government, and small business manufacturers, but explain a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I do I do a whole bunch of stuff, but I'll try to put it into a small package here. I like to come alongside of a small manufacturer that maybe can't afford a full-time government person, or just doesn't want to at this point because they don't have enough business. But they have a GSA contract, or they have state and local contracts, and they understand the importance of those vertical markets. They just don't really know what to do. Like, I'm sure you've heard, like, well, we have a contract, we've had it for 5 years, but we're not doing anything. Okay, well, what is your sales strategy? What is your marketing plan? What is your business development plan? Oh, well, we just let the people do what they want to do, and we hope we get sales, right? And someone I used to work for says hope is not a strategy, and
so
I
true.
agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I have a lot of hope in me, but it's not a strategy, right? And so many people, especially with something like public sector, it's just, I think people just get scared of it, right? There are some rules that don't apply commercially, and so they're just like, I don't know, it just scares me. I don't know how to do it. And so to really come alongside these businesses and say, okay, well, let's start from the beginning and let's create the program. I don't do it for them, but I do it with them, so that, down the road, they might not need me anymore, right? And I'm fine with that. Maybe they hire a government person or a public sector, or they, whatever they decide. But, my goal is really to teach them to fish, right? So to build the program with them so that they can have a strong program down the road that, they're happy with and they're selling.
So there's a quote there about teach a man to fish and he'll fish for a lifetime, but I forget, what's the other half of it?
Yeah, I'm going to forget that too.
Oh,
give a man a fish and he'll eat, it's something about
that's right. Yeah, give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you'll feed him for a lifetime. Yes. So I love that. And I think that's great. And I love that you're focusing on small businesses, because there are a lot of amazing small business manufacturers in our industry. I've had the privilege and the pleasure to work with a lot of them, and they just need a little help. And I think it's great. And when you look at our industry as a whole, there are some amazing small businesses doing some really cool stuff and making some really dynamic products, but they don't have the bandwidth to hire all these people and to do all this and to do all that. And when people like us come along, we provide a much needed resource in a time frame to help them. And then when our project is done, then we're done, but they always have the option to come back to us at a later date. So
right. And I think, it's funny. I think I told you, some of the businesses that I'm working with at Catalyst, I didn't even know they existed. Right. And so I'm like, people are calling me. I'm like, who are you? Yeah. I got to get on the website. Right. And I'm finding these gems of like woman-owned small businesses, and, it's just crazy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a contract and you have a socioeconomic status. Like, this is gold. Let's go figure out how to market that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's such a big deal to the government.
Well, I had heard at one point in time, this is a couple of years ago, and I forget who actually told me, that they were tracking 3,000 manufacturers of office furniture in the United States. That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
And we only think of, when we think of manufacturers, we think of probably the top 100. There's 2,900 others doing really cool stuff. So I appreciate it, because I've always been a fan of the small business and really, really enjoy working with them. So I'm glad that you're in this field doing it. But I'm going to ask you this dreaded question. Why government? It is not like the hottest topic. It's not the sexiest topic in the world. Why government?
It's kind of funny. I fought it. I didn't want to do government. When I parted ways with a company out of Texas, and I started interviewing, everyone just was like, okay, well, we really like you and want to hire you, but we don't know where to put you. Let's talk about what your background is. And so part of my background was government. It was not a huge part, but part of it was government. And every manufacturer, almost, I think, except one that I talked to, just like zeroed in on, well, you could come do government for us because we don't have anyone doing that. And it was really just a way for them to get me in their company, right? And I fought it so bad, Sid, that I was like, you know what? I'm going to take some time off. Maybe I shouldn't be in this industry anymore. I don't want to do government, right? Like, I didn't even think it was sexy, right? So I was like, okay. And then I took about 6 months off outside of the industry, just, did some stuff helping some friends. And I woke up, I remember this is when we still had Neocon East. And I woke up one day and I was like, I think it was September. And I'm like, oh, Neocon East is coming up. I better get my butt out there. I need a job. And so I started to call the people I'd interviewed with, and I was like, okay, I'll come talk to you about government. And I ended up going to work for this great woman-owned small business, ESI. Carol Keogh and John Keogh were the owners at the time. And they handed over the reins and said, create a government program. And I did, and I loved it. And I had a great time and worked with some great people and was able to really grow that over 5 years. I was there, really grow that program. And, now I'm just in. Now I'm sold on it. From no, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I did turn down a job because I said I didn't want to do government for the rest of my life. And now I have a business that focuses on selling to government. So
there you have it. So you've got your boots on, and they're in the cement of the government box, and that's where you're going to stay for a while. But I love it because I love the story of how you resisted your calling, if you will. You resisted stepping into that. And then finally that little light bulb moment went off and said, this is really where I need to be. You created a successful program. Now you're building an amazing, successful business all around this very unique niche, which is, we're not going to talk about government. We've had other guests on the episode or on the show to talk about government, but it is a very misunderstood and the perception of it is extremely complex, but it's also very lucrative. You can make a lot of money selling to the government. And I think that's what people don't truly understand, which is why I've had two other guests on talking about it, because in the world we live in today, dealers, specifically manufacturers as well, we need as many streams of revenue as you can possibly tap into, and diversifying is really important. So if you're not selling into the government, you should be. And if you're a manufacturer and you want to explore selling into the government, there's this lady sitting on the other side of screen from me that can actually help you figure out how to do that. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and it's a totally different world. When people ask about how's business for a manufacturer, you almost have to separate it out, because even in a pandemic, in a recession, you want to be in public sector, right? Because especially the federal side of public sector, they're still spending money. Like everyone that I've talked to, their GSA sales are up year over year. Yep. There's not a ton of people that you talk to commercially that have been able to say that for the past 2 years.
Correct.
But all the heavy government players have been able to say, yep, business is up. So I think it speaks a lot to diversification, right? Of, the vertical markets, whether it's government, public sector, healthcare, whatever it is, right? Just the diversification of it.
Well, I've talked about this on other episodes. And the one thing that you can count on is that the government always spends money.
Yep.
And they always pay their bills.
Yep.
They may not pay them in the time frame that you want them to be paid, but they always pay their bills. So you can always count on they're going to spend money. And they're going to pay. So it's a whether or not you want a piece of that pie is really at the end of the day what it amounts to. So Michelle, I really want to dive into for just a couple of minutes a little bit about your journey from the perspective of being a woman in our industry. And I'm not saying this to call anybody out or anything like that, or to create controversy, but our industry is not a leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And unfortunately, I fit in the category where the majority of us sit, which I am older, gray-haired white men. And when you look around our industry, you look at leaders in our industry, a lot of them look like me. And as someone that's been in the industry as long as you've been in the industry, talk to me a little bit about that journey, and then why this is important that we focus on this aspect of inclusion of people from diverse backgrounds, regardless of what they are.
Sure. So, I think when I look around today, it's much better, right? Because I can look at, there was just an announcement this week of the new president of Steelcase is a female. And so that I was like, wow, that's great. And you look around, some of the major manufacturers definitely have strong females in the company. But when I started 26 years ago, it was a very different story. You would see, females in dealers more than manufacturers, and definitely not at the high level of manufacturers. So, it's great to say 26 years later that it is, very different than when I started. But, I spent a lot of time, and it's never really bothered me, I think, because I come from, a family I have 3 brothers and myself. So I was like, hey, I'm always part of the boys club because that's how I was raised. but yeah, it has been, and I hate that term, but it really, even today there, boys clubs. And I was thinking about it in preparation, and I think so much of it is that we like to surround ourselves with people that are like us. And that really isn't a great strategy, right? Because it's the diversification that makes everything happen, right? It's having different faces at the table, different genders, different colors. I mean, everything, right? That just invite them all to sit down at the table. And then that's what makes us who we are. And that's what makes us great at what we do, because if we do it right and we listen, all those different ideas and the different backgrounds and the different experiences feed into. But even today, as I look around, there are some companies that I'll look on and I'll just look at pictures of, who they put on their website. And I'm like, look at that. It's all white men. Mm-hmm. Wow. Right. Like, and I think part of it is that we surround ourselves with people like us. And then secondly, it's got to be an effort. You've got to make the effort. And so, whether that means you have to have someone on your team that calls you out and says, oh, you're looking for someone, let's look for a diverse player here, because you're just a group of, men at the table right now and we need more. But it's got to be a concerted effort, because if you don't, you will continually bring people. It's just human nature that we surround ourselves with people like us.
I think the word here is intention.
Yep.
You have to be intentional about diversifying your employee base in order to further the growth. And I'm going to actually add faster of your organization, because people with diverse backgrounds think differently. And it's so powerful what you just said. If we all come around the table and we don't all look the same, we can solve problems in our industry. We can solve problems in our businesses by bringing people in with different ideas and different thoughts than what we have, that will allow us to propel our growth forward. I'll also add to this, it's also the diversity of job function. When you're bringing people into the table to solve a problem, don't just bring all salespeople or all leadership. Bring the guy from the factory and the person from customer service, and, bring these people in, because they see the challenge and they see the customer experience or the customer journey differently than a whole bunch of salespeople do, or sales leaders, or even leadership do sitting at a table. They see it from a different perspective and they have ideas, and their voices should be heard.
Yeah, I just visited VIA, and I think you just had Nora on.
I did, yeah.
I just visited them
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, I just visited their factory, and they had a guy come in and talk to us about their Kaizen process, and they do that, right? They bring in, part of the Kaizen process, they bring in people from all areas, and it's a huge investment of time and money, but they get the people around the table to solve the problems. They get the right people, right? So it was just a fascinating story to see that, and that just really kind of nailed it for me, right? Like, yes, that is why you need to do that. And the other thing that I know we have in common is our love for personality tests. And I say, you have to bring around different types of leaders and different types of, positions. You said, actually company positions, but also different personalities.
Yep.
Because you get different stuff from them. We're all unique, and we all have different backgrounds and different things we bring to the table. But if you're not inviting us to share our ideas or to at least give our opinion, you're just missing out.
Okay. I have to know, because we have talked about this personality assessments so quite a bit offline. And by the way, Michelle and I are friends. And so obviously, as you figured that out, guys listening, or those of you listening, and we do talk occasionally on the phone, and we have talked in the past about personality assessments. Which one's your favorite?
Oh gosh. That's so hard, because I really just like reading them, right? So my fascination is the fact that you can take this assessment and answer these questions, which you're like, well, that's a weird question, whatever. And then you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, they know me. Like, they know the inside me that my mom doesn't even know. It's on paper, right? So I just really love when they nail it, right? When you can just take a test. I don't even pay attention to, a high IS or whatever. I'm like, oh, read that. That is me.
Yep.
So I think they're all good.
Yeah, it is. It's like they're inside your brain, and it's like all of a sudden it's like right here on a piece of paper. Well, I think my favorite, I have a couple of things to say here. The first thing, I would like to go back and take the DISC profile test again, because the last time I took it was, oh my gosh, 15, 18 years ago. So it was a long time ago. I would really like to see the results as I've grown. I'd like to see the results and see how they differ. And I think I still have the one I took however many years ago. And you have mine?
No, I probably have your results. No, I might have your results. I have mine. I have like this, I have it digitally and printed. I have like this folder that's like literally this thick, like inches thick. Of all my things. And I'm like, oh, there's the disc, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's the,
Yep.
I'm like,
I think my favorite new one is the Working Genius one that I shared with you about, because it's like really, really cool. But I'm really sad because they started a podcast around the Working Genius and now they've been MIA since July. And so I'm like, I was really enjoying that podcast and continuing to learn about the Working Genius by the folks at the Table Group. But they quit podcasting. Both of their podcasts have gone dark since July. So no real explanation, but that's okay.
I just got an email from them. So maybe it's coming back.
Ooh, okay.
It's their birthday month. If they're celebrating a year.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I'll have to check it out. All right. So sorry, we derailed. We went down a little rabbit hole there. Yes. So let's come back for a minute, Michelle, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a woman in our industry, and as someone that is an established leader, an established voice, and now someone with their own company, what advice would you give to other leaders? If you could give 2 or 3 pieces of advice to other leaders about being intentional with this and how to attract people that are different from them in order to help their organizations grow and thrive?
Well, I think first is just make sure you are intentional. Like always think about that. I would say second, invite people to the table, right? That's all we really want, is to be asked to sit at the table. It doesn't have to be at the table all the time, but invite different people to have conversations. Like you said, different positions, different genders, different races, like invite them to the table, even if they're not necessarily by title a leader. Invite them to the leader table and ask their opinion. And I really just think it comes down to just being cognizant of the fact that, you are a white male and I am a white female, and I need to be cognizant. I mean, if I could, I would surround myself with women. Like I've tried, right? But, it's just human nature. And so I think it's just remembering that it is human nature, and then just understanding the benefit to having the different personalities, the different backgrounds, and what they can add, and then really just listen, right? When you invite them to the table, you give them a voice, but you have to listen to the voice, because if you don't, then it's for nothing.
Oh my gosh. Hit the back button, guys, for like 10 seconds and listen to what Michelle said again, because we do have to listen. And I think listening is one of the most underdeveloped skills, because it is a skill. I think it's one of the most underdeveloped skills of human beings, because we listen to respond rather than listen to understand. And there is a big difference in what those two are. And I wish that more people would truly listen to understand what other people are saying. The world would be a much better place,
Agreed. And I think we come to with preconceived stuff already. And that's why sometimes we're not even listening to respond. We're just listening to pretend and to say, we invited you to the table. Thank you for your input. Whereas, that's just a waste of everyone's time.
Yep.
I do a lot of stuff for companies where I do a thing that's called an assessment. And I say to them, we've got to take action on something, because you just paid me to talk to all these dealers and all these reps. Now you've got to do something, right? Because they've asked for 20 things. Let's give them something to show we heard you. Yep. Right? Like that's where the proof is, right? Did we take action? Did we change something? Did we give you something that you asked for? Because if we don't, you just wasted time and money.
Absolutely. And information and data is just information and data if you don't use it to take action to move forward, period. It does not. Right. Now, let's talk about moving forward, because you and I are both involved in something that is trying to move this forward and is trying to move diversity, equity, and inclusion forward in our industry, but also trying to attract young people to our industry, which is Dovetail. And Stephanie, the executive director of Dovetail, was on the episode or on the podcast a couple of months ago, had a great interview with her. She'll actually be back in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about. But you and I sit on the board, the steering committee of Dovetail, and I would love to hear your perspectives of why Dovetail is important and why people should get involved in Dovetail.
Yeah, so, obviously we've talked a little bit about just diversity being important. But I think, when you look around our industry, we're getting older. We're not really great at getting people in. Like when I started in this industry, and I've talked to a lot of people, I actually haven't really talked to you about this, Sid, but I didn't come in saying, oh my gosh, let me sell commercial office furniture. That's what I want to do with my life, right? When I was in college, I didn't even want to be in sales, quite honestly. But I kind of fell into furniture, and it's been a phenomenal career for me, right? And so I think we got to get the word out there that there's even this industry known as commercial office furniture, and the different opportunities to have a career, whether it's entrepreneurial or it's, you want to be in sales, you want to be in project management, you want to design. There's so many different things that we could use. And I think, as the industry is getting older, we need to really make an effort to bring younger people in so that, 26 years from now, someone is sitting here talking to someone else that's doing a podcast about their fabulous career in furniture, right? And I think we have to be just intentional, the word that you used earlier, right? Intentional about how do we get people in the industry? And it blows my mind that, I don't think every industry would have a nonprofit like sprout up to do something like this, right? So I think it's really just phenomenal that Dovetail was created as a nonprofit, and its goal is to bring industry partners together to get young people and diverse people into our industry. Right. And so on the steering committee, there's a group of us, but then there's also the ambassadors, which are younger than we are.
You said that so well, too.
College.
You said that so well. Younger than us.
And so I think, I just really love this organization and what their goal is. And I think, as we're developing it, which we're in the, launch phase now, I think it's just really got so much potential to do so much more. And that's when I talk to you and when I talk to Stephanie and I talk to the steering committee, right? Like there's a need for getting people in this industry, but then there's a need for keeping good people in this industry, right? I almost left before I, took that government position because I was like, well, maybe I need a new career. But there's so many ways that we could do it. Seat at the table, obviously. But I think there's, opportunities for mentorship, right? A strong mentorship program within companies, but also outside of companies, And so we've talked about all those things. And I think, I'm excited about Dovetail today, but I think when we look back on it 10 years from now, it's got so much potential to be so much more. And I could get really excited about that as well.
Well, I have no doubt that Dovetail will become a strong driving force in creating diversity, bringing new people, attracting new talent to our industry, because most of us that have been in the industry as long as we've been in, when you ask the origin story, it's either my family owned a business or I fell into it by accident. And I'm going to actually wager to bet that probably the 80-20 rule, 80% of us fell into it by accident and then never left, because it is a fun industry. It's a great place to work. And there's a lot of different jobs you can do. We're perfect examples of all the different types of things that you can do and have amazing, thriving careers. And we just want, through the power of Dovetail, to share that message with people that are just out of college or right on the verge of getting out of college, to expose them to what it is we do. Because I don't know about you, Michelle, but when people say, what do you do? And you say, oh, well, we support or we sell office furniture, they look at you like, what? Yeah. People sell office furniture? I mean, because they don't think it's a thing.
Yeah, which is great. It always makes me laugh, right? Because I'm like, do you go to an office? Do you sit in a chair?
Do you go to a hotel? Do you walk into the lobby of the doctor? Yeah, because that stuff comes from somewhere.
Yeah, but when I first got in it, I mean, I was probably, 7, 8 years out of college when I got in it. And it was overwhelming to me, right? Like, I just remember telling my friends, like, oh my gosh, there are so many, it's not just a PED. Like, there are options. It's not just a lateral file. There are like 100 options, right? Like, there's so much going on. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes, it is crazy. Well, speaking of crazy, I want to start wrapping up in just a couple of minutes, because I want to talk about the crazy times that we've been in.
Okay.
And we've had lots of discussions about this, about some of the changes happening inside of our industry. From your perspective and where you sit today, because you're new into this. I mean, you started a business in 2021. So right coming off the end of 2020. And now here we are almost at the end of 2021. So what are some of the changes that you're seeing? And let's talk about this high level for just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, well, I think, I've always been a fan of change. I love change. And if you don't, man, whew, you are in trouble right now. But, I think, what was that book, Who Moved My Cheese or whatever,
Yep.
way back when? And so, change is inevitable at any time. And it's been a long time in our industry since we've seen change like we're seeing. I think, every day it's like, who bought who, who's merging with who, all from dealers to manufacturers to people changing jobs. It's crazy, right, to watch it. And then, at the micro level, like just in the industry, what's going on at the GSA level. I was telling you, I just got off another call about a mandate, right, that's being pushed down by GSA, and like all the changes that are coming there. And will we still have this type of contract? And it's just crazy. It's just full of change, and there's a lot to keep up with. But I think, in the end, change is good, right? We need change. We talked about diversification as a change. We definitely need change in the industry. It just gets a little scary when you start to see, big, the Miller Knoll type of mergers. I don't think anyone saw that one coming. And then what the repercussions of that are, right? People are going to lose jobs, and, they're going to consolidate. And right. And so that's always hard to watch and hard to kind of understand. But I think, again, when we get through it all, we'll look back and it'll be a different industry, but I think there'll be a lot of great things to celebrate about it.
So some of the things that I've heard you say, and I'll recap it just a minute, is change is constant. It's right now, and it's rapid constant right now. It's like every day you wake up and there could be a news report about something else and some other change happening. The important thing here is to make sure whoever you are and whatever role that you play in our industry, that you take the time to understand the change, why it happened, or why it's happening, and then the potential impact to you and your organization. Once you do that, really what you've got to do is manage through the change.
Right.
You've got to manage and lead your organization through the change. And that's at all levels. It doesn't mean we need to panic or hit the panic button because something has changed, like the mandates that you're talking about. We don't need to hit the panic button. We just need to manage through the change and how it impacts our organization, and how can our organizations change and pivot, because when there's change around us, that means there has to be change within us. So how can we change and pivot? And then I think you said this in one of the calls that we had together: stay the course.
Stay the course. Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Stay the course. Keep pushing forward. But I think a lot of this goes back to something our frequent listeners will know, that I've said this a lot, is be a student of our industry. Be a student of the industry and learn and absorb as much information as you can. Read the industry related magazines and information in order to educate yourself. Don't go hide in a closet and let the world change around you.
Right. I think that education is so important, right? You said understand the change. Like, I think you do yourself a disservice, you do your company a disservice if you hear of something that is a change that's happening and you just get upset about it, or you just don't care about it, and if it's going to affect you in any way,
or you ignore it.
Yeah. I think, take the time, and it's just time, take the time to dig in, read an article, ask a question, join a webinar. In my world, I sit on webinars, right? Because they're all talking about these things. And I want to be the person, on the call when they say, hey, Michelle, do you know about this? I want to say, yes, I know about it. This is what I know. And this is what I found out, right? Even if you're not my customer, I want to be that person that has dug into it, because it affects, it affects my world and it affects my customers. So I want to not necessarily be an expert on it. Sometimes I do on certain topics, but I just want to know enough to have an intelligent conversation about it, because who wants to be like, oh yeah, I don't really know. Well, isn't that your industry, or isn't that what you do? Or, well, yeah, but that one I just chose not to pay attention to.
I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people right now saying, I don't want to pay attention. I'm going to let it swirl around me, and then everything's going to be okay. That blender right now is going to keep swirling for quite some time, I believe. So you got to pay attention to it. So I really appreciate your sharing your thoughts about it. We've had a lot of fun conversations about this, which I think is what is really needed. And it's part of the reason that I have the podcast, is to share insights from other people and to have interesting conversations. And we've had some where we've disagreed, but that's okay. We can disagree, but we can also have an educated adult conversation about it without getting mad at anyone about their different viewpoints. Because I don't know that any of us are 100% right.
Right. I agree. And
Changing
you
too
got to be able to
fast.
have the conversation, right? And then sometimes, you learn something in the conversation,
Yeah.
whether you agree or not. You always learn something.
Well, hopefully we're learning something each and every day. And with that, I want to give you an opportunity to share another way you're sharing your voice. You became a writer. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember when I said I never wanted to do government. I always used to want to write when I was in like high school, right? I thought I was a writer. I was going to write a book, and then that went away. And I've had so many great opportunities since I started Catalyst. Be a subject matter expert, write an article, and be on your podcast. I stress over these things because I'm like, I don't know. Is that what I'm supposed to do? But I have loved writing for Delve Magazine, MRL. And I do just a monthly article on delving into public sector. So sometimes the hardest part is figuring out what I'm going to talk about. Well, once I start to write, it's just like once I start to talk, stuff just comes out. It's not that hard. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed that. It's been just a blessing to me to be able to have that opportunity.
Okay. So we were both in manufacturing. We both were leaders in businesses. We both worked at dealerships. Now we both own businesses that we're supporting our industry. And now, welcome to being a journalist, Michelle. So now we are both journalists. What's next? What are you going to do next? So I can put it on my list to start preparing for it.
Well, no, I feel like I'm following in your footsteps. So maybe a podcast. I don't know.
That would be a great idea. We need more podcasts. Thank you, Michelle. I love that. Because as you were talking about that, we have these almost parallel paths along the way here. So you're now a journalist. Now next is a podcast. Sure. And then it's your turn to do something new that I have to follow. Okay.
Okay, well, I have to find you're so ahead of me in stuff, especially technology. I mean, we could talk about Clubhouse, we could talk about all sorts of stuff, right? Oh, yeah. You're just always a step ahead of me. And I'm like, oh, I really like that. I'll do that with you. So I'm just kind of your tag along at this point.
They're called shiny objects, and I like them. And I heard of another one the other day, and I was like, oh, this one sounds really cool. And I'm like, nope, don't. Leave it alone. Don't download that app. Don't go there. And so I'm resisting, staying focused. But it is fun to explore, especially new technologies. It's fun to explore. Yes. I downloaded one today. I'm going to try it and see what happens with it. So anyway.
Right, and I think it's so great to challenge yourself, right? Because I mean, if someone would have said to you 10 years ago, "Hey, you're going to have a podcast," you probably would have been like, "A what?"
Yeah,
well, I mean, really might have been, "What is a podcast?" back then, but. Right? Who would have known? And so, I mean, you're so good at it and you love it. And I think you've got to challenge yourself. I would have never, I stressed over writing the article, the subject matter expert, and just being on your podcast. I don't know, I'm new to this. I'm a new business owner, right? What are the things I'm supposed to do? Fortunately, I have great mentors. You're one of them that I can just be like, I don't know. Most of the time, everyone just forces me to do stuff, honestly.
Well, you're doing an amazing job. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. It's really not a secret, but I'm going to let you in on a secret. So today is October 20th. This episode will launch next week, actually. I'm cutting it a little close. My podcast editor is on my butt about it, but that's okay. And she's going to listen to this and laugh because I called her out. But Tuesday, today's Wednesday. Yesterday, Tuesday, October the 19th, I launched a new podcast.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
What is that about?
So the new podcast is called The Amazing Entrepreneurs Club. And it is a podcast targeted at entrepreneurs and supporting them along their journey. We are entrepreneurs. And so it will share stories of other entrepreneurs and their journey, allowing them a platform to share insights about what helped them be successful, tips and resources to help other entrepreneurs. And then we've got a fun little episode segments in there called 10 to Win, where they're 10-minute tips. And they're not just me talking. These 10-minute tips are from other amazing entrepreneurs as well. And so it's really fun. It's really exciting. The trailer episode launched yesterday. And then the first 2 or 3 episodes will drop the first week of November. And then after that, there'll be one episode a week following it. So
I love it.
I have 2 podcasts now.
I love it. I can't wait. I'm going to go subscribe to that one.
Thank you. It's on every listening platform available now. As of last night, all the listening platforms have picked it up. So you can get Apple, Spotify, Google. They all have it now.
See, that's my next shiny object right there.
I'm ready. You let me know when you're ready. I'll help you.
Okay. Perfect.
Michelle, it's been a great conversation. A pleasure to have you on today. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story and your journey. Appreciate our friendship and how long it's lasted and where you are headed. If our community would like to get in touch with you, Michelle, what is the best way for them to do that?
You can obviously find me on LinkedIn, and then you can email me, michelle@strategic-catalyst.com.
So we will put Michelle's LinkedIn profile link in the show notes, as well as her email address in the show notes. Remember, guys, if you do reach out to her either way, be sure you add a note, let her know that you heard her here on the Trend Report. And that's why you're connecting, so she knows where you're coming from. Michelle, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you very much. And guys, go out there and have a great week, and we will see you guys soon. Take care.